Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the sports betting show hosted by a real statistics professor. This is your host, Professor Sides, along with cousin Jared. Week 10 is already upon us. We are into fall. I don't know about you, cousin Jared, down in Texas, or viewer wherever you are. Here in the Midwest, we kind of went from summer to winter. It was almost very Texas-like in that we had like a week of good fall, and then it's gotten cold around these parts here. I don't know if it's starting to get fall like quite where you are, but we're going to be talking about some games being played in November here. Saturday's November 1st, I believe. And so Halloween is this week, and we are into the almost the last month of college football here. It happens fast.
Crazy. It does. Life definitely comes at you fast for sure in college football. It feels like it takes forever for the season to get here, and then it finally does, and it just goes by so fast.
And then it's like the opposite of baseball, which is like drives on forever. It's still happening somehow.
Yeah.
Week 9 in the books. It feels a little like Groundhog. How many movie references can we drop here in one episode? We'll see how many little Easter egg there. Already got a couple for you folks.
Yeah.
Same kind of story. And I was actually looking at this, just another, ho-hum, slightly down, slightly break even, whatever, losing the VIG kind of week. A couple of notes, viewer, real quick. First off, the models' predictions are better than they've ever been. Looking at mean absolute error, and even relative to other models, the model's like predicting really, really well. I made some adjustments in the offseason. And so I'm looking at it now going like, the model's doing what it's supposed to do in predicting the game. It's just hasn't translated to the results for us. And I was noticing it's happened both with the good. We talked about we haven't had really bad weeks. Because last year, by this point, we already had 3 weeks that were worse than any of our worst week this year. But we also haven't had those like big good weeks either. It's been really weird. 2 years ago was the same thing.
Yeah.
I think we had 2 weeks that were worse than this one now. But the third week that was coming, what it was week 10, I think was coming up. I don't quite know what to make of that. We haven't really done bad. We just haven't had it come together yet. And I feel like we're just saying the same thing every week. I don't really know what to make of it.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. The crazy thing that I was kind of thinking was, I honestly don't even know how many picks we've made. It's been at least 150, almost 200.
Yeah.
How many?
I think
we've made
about 300. About 300 by now.
Okay, 300 picks, and we are literally one good week away from being being profitable for the season. It is amazing that you could have that many picks, and to your point, not have any good weeks and not have any terrible weeks, just so many weeks. Exactly the same. This might be maybe in college basketball, because I don't pay as close attention to the results there, but like baseball, we always talk about is so up and down. Hockey was up and down. College football was up and down. Week to week, it was up and down. NFL, we had one season that was only up.
Yeah, that was insane.
But that was a crazy year. But just every week being the same, like it does feel like we're in Groundhog Day.
Yeah,
it's just the same week every week. It's really crazy.
It is because Jared, I think me being, on the autism spectrum, I think is probably partially why this is. I look at things so analytically, so rationally. I can't not do that. Irrational thoughts just like pop like balloons in my head. I just can't do it. It helps me look at my teams rationally while we continue to fade Baylor to so much profit. We'll talk more about Baylor in everyone's favorite segment. The professor torments himself.
Yeah.
But I can look at like my teams rationally. When they're good, I can look at it, good. And when they're bad, I can look at it bad. But looking at it here, I feel like the same way with picks a lot of times. When we've had good luck, I'll be the first to say like, man, this is just some good variance of running good luck. Like, it's good. It's probably not going to always be this good, unfortunately. And I know that's very counter to most handicappers. And it works the same with the bad luck. I'm trying to look at it, accurately. I don't want to, always be complaining kind of thing, but it does feel like this year, every week there's like one game that I'm like, well, I don't know how we won that one, and 3 or 4 that I'm like, how did we lose this one? I swear I'm a broken record with it, but Michigan this last week gives up the backdoor cover with like 13 seconds to go. Is just another in a long run of examples. Missouri, the starting quarterback gets hurt in that game, now out for the season. Obviously,
Yep.
bad news for them, bad
Yep.
luck for them. But they had that Hail Mary that was completed at the 1 yard line. Like we
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
even
Yeah. What
get
are the
good
odds?
luck, right? It's like it's just
Yeah.
been the weirdest thing, and I think, and I know, viewer, you probably have an opinion on this. Part of me says, let's change something up, and it's not working right. And some of you would agree with that, and some of you would disagree. Part of me says, I don't really think our process is wrong. The model's doing pretty well. Let's just kind of trust the process. But it does feel like every week being the same is a little bit frustrating. We have a lot to talk about here for week 10. I want to reflect real quick on week 9, because you're one thing you saw from week 9 that got your attention that is important for you, for bettors, to keep their thoughts on moving forward.
Well, and this is a very niche response. I will acknowledge that this is kind of a niche response, but the college football injury and availability reports, I'm aside from somebody I would say, if they're saying that somebody's out, then you could take that and say, yes, that person is out. But we actually have an example of USC earlier this season listing a player as out, and he then played in the second half of that game. So that's a bit of, it's not an exaggeration, it happened, but yeah. But some of the things that we've seen from the availability reports in college football, Utah got a talking to by the Big 12 conference office with Devin Dampier earlier this year against Texas Tech, how he was seemingly limited and kind of at least questionable at some point during the week. It was not reported as such. Utah kind of got a slap on the wrist. And so then this week they listed him as questionable and then probable, and then removed him from the injury report at the very end. But he was only available in an emergency situation, and I don't think he played any snaps in the game against Colorado, which why would he have played any snaps with how that
Yeah,
game
I was going to say, a side
played out?
note, one of the most impressive beatdowns I've ever witnessed. I mean, that is like
Yeah.
NCAA football on freshman level type dominance. I mean, that was
Yeah.
just folks, go look at the box score. We've seen blowouts, but I'm not sure we've seen many, especially first halves, where the yardage was that different in a conference game that wasn't like Oklahoma State involved kind of game.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I just say take that all with a grain of salt. We had other examples. The quarterback for Purdue, Brown, was listed as doubtful, and then all of a sudden on Saturday he's playing, which I guess that could be just a one-off thing. But you just have to really be careful with these injury reports with college, and really the best information you're going to get, unfortunately, is right before kickoff. And so just keep that in mind. We operate with the best information we have at the time, but even that best information is sometimes suspect. Yeah, sometimes suspect, and so just keep that in mind.
Of course, viewer, for the record, right, we do have a player-based model, and so it's kind of what Cousin Jared is talking about here. We update that based off of who we think is going to play. In other sports, I found it to be a little bit easier to predict, and when we use words like doubtful, probable, questionable, we have enough historical data to kind of know what that means and say, what's the probability they play? And then we can put that into the model and adjust. In college football, it means almost nothing. And so the fact that it's player-based helps us in a lot of ways. And in a lot of ways, it's maybe not as impactful as it could be, unfortunately. But folks, if you're newer here with us, we refer to the models that I've built by the name Sideline. Higher implies more points. That's for the player grades, which have available for every player. If anybody's interested in the player, you can always message me over on Discord if you're with us over there on Patreon. I do provide the quarterback ratings for every team in the file every week, and of course the team grades as well, and you'll see those team grades on screen. Models and ratings are predictive and forward facing. That doesn't necessarily mean it's not a reflection of how well they've played so far. It almost always is, but there are exceptions to that based off of things like injuries and based off of things where we just don't think a team is necessarily going to be quite as good or lucky as they've been before. Cousin Jared, I think the one that we have to talk about with this one is, as I'll take a little detour here, we have to talk about South Florida, a team that we talked about last week as getting a lot of good luck, and their luck runs out and they lose to Memphis. And You sent me a not suitable for work text when that game went final and Memphis won, which
Yeah.
we will not share with the viewers here. But I
Yeah.
think there were a lot of people out there who had some harsh words for us picking Memphis, and
Yeah.
I told the people on Discord, I said, look, the model has Memphis and South Florida at the exact same spots it had them this week as it after the game as it did before the game, right next to each other. Both very good teams. And you saw a very even football game. And so why
Yeah.
South Florida was favored on the road like that, I'm not really sure. I don't think it was the right call. And had South Florida won that game, that doesn't change any of this. I'm not going to sit here and
Right.
I again, I think this is just kind of the way my brain operates, which is, I think, what makes you viewer, that you're in good hands with me at the helm here. Is had Memphis won that game, and I'm not going to sit here and go on a tirade. And I told you so, and haha, and that sort of stuff. But had they lost, I was gonna. My tune is the same. Thought it would be a close game.
Right.
It was a close game. It was a great game. The fact that Memphis scored a little bit later doesn't change it. It was an even game, and South Florida could have kicked the field goal and taken it to overtime. Would have been truly even there, right?
Right.
The bottom
Right.
line is not about, one game doesn't make me a genius. It doesn't make the model a genius. It doesn't make it terrible either. We talk about the average, absolute error in these games is still 12 points. That's the average. And so when you take a two standard deviation approach, you're saying a game's typically going to miss by up to 20 points from its prediction. And that's not just a prediction from my model. It's also from the spread. So when something's off by 17 points, you still kind of just shrug and say, that's sports. One or two things happen.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily
Right.
make anything, prove any point. And so, for better or worse, we're not going to sit here and say that was like the most genius call ever taking Memphis, but had they lost, I was going to say it wasn't the most genius call ever to take South Florida. Instead, I would have said the whole point of this is we kind of just thought that we win that a little bit more than we lose it with Memphis. And that's what made it smart. It's about the totality and
Right.
not the one game. And that's what we talk about this, of course, the long run value, the probabilistic edge. It's a lot of nuance, and it's not the most exciting thing to think about because we're not going to go out here and say we know exactly what's going to happen. We have games that we think we know how it'll play out, but we always know that one play can swing 7 points, two can swing 14 points, and sometimes the breaks just happen or don't in any one game. And so we try not to get caught up in locks. We think about value, long run, et cetera, and that's kind of what we try to emphasize here. Folks, you've been with us long enough. I think you probably know that. But again, you can join us over on Patreon for picks, more projections, more insights, discussion over on Discord. Hockey just crushing it with some of our people over on Discord, giving out hockey picks, NFL picks still over there, baseball still kind of on our last week, of course, but a lot happening here and a bunch of available benefits over on Patreon if you want to join us for more. We'll get to it here. Going to start off with a Thursday spotlight game. Cousin Jared, an interesting game here. Tulane at UTSA, 7:30 p.m. We've got this one, Tulane winning by an average of 8.4. We only have to lay 3.5 with Tulane. Cousin Jared, I feel like the one adjustment I'm trying to steer us into is let's kind of stick to the hits. Let's stick to what we know is working for the most part. And let's kind of try to see, are there situations where the model is a little biased towards or against one team or the other, and that's not really working out? Let's just stay off. Maybe the model's right. I don't know, but we don't have to put our hard-earned money on that. But I think fading UTSA has been one that the model's kind of been saying, y'all, UTSA is not that good. The market hasn't caught up. It's been working for us. And so we're going to kind of keep doing it. I mean, that's as simple as it is for me. I don't know what your take is.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. This was a UTSA team that I was impressed with the first week of the season when they played A&M, and then it has only been downhill from there. They have done very little that they can be proud of at this point. I think, one way that you can kind of measure that is, especially with how many coaching openings are already open this cycle, and who knows how many more will open up fairly soon. Jeff Traylor's name hasn't come up in a lot of those conversations because UTSA just hasn't done that
real
well
hot
this
commodity
year.
a couple of years ago. I mean, there was talk of him having
sure.
real short stint at UTSA and parlaying that to something better, and that's not really gone great.
And who knows? Maybe he ends up at Baylor. I mean, who's to say he doesn't end up at Baylor? But anyway, one of the names that you
Can't
are
be
hearing
worse,
with a lot of Yeah, that's true. That's true. One of the names you are hearing with a lot of those openings is John Summerall, and we've liked Summerall from his time at Troy, now at Tulane, and maybe they are a half step back from what they were last season, but still a very good football team. I see them going even on the road here and taking care of business against this UTSA team that has quite a few flaws. I mean, look at that defense. UTSA was always driven by their offense, but when they were playing well, their defense was, in the 60s, 70s, 80s. It was not in, number 104. So I think Tulane goes on the road. I think they can score plenty of points to cover a number like 3.5.
And because you're 3.5, obviously an interesting number because you hold your breath. Can you get 3? You wait too long, you have to lay 4. What is your take on that number? Are you still playing it at 4? Is this one of those, and we have a specific segment we're going to talk about later. Are we worried about the wrong key number in this one? And you're saying, I don't really care if it's 4. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I would probably play this up to 6.5. 7 is my spot where I'm like, I don't know. UTSA could definitely score late and cover a number like that. So I'm good at laying 3.5. I'm good with laying 4. If it got to 4.5, I may just wait and see what it did. Like I said, I'm good playing it all the way up to 6.5.
Right now, it looks like 3.5 is kind of across the board. There is a 4 out there, so make sure you get the 3.5 just in case they do win by 4. It's a semi-common outcome there. So a Thursday night game to kind of get your juices going for our main spotlight games. We're going to start off at noon. Probably the best game of the noon slate. A weaker college football slate. We'll talk more about that here when we get to the next game. But noon Eastern, Miami at SMU. We're going to go over 50.5. We're talking about numbers. This one's 50.5. 51 and 51.5, kind of moving around here on Sunday night at all the same numbers at different books. So if you really wanted to go for a middle, folks, you could play the over 50.5 and the under 51.5. I would not recommend that. It's just not going to be a positive expected value play. But
Yeah.
51.5 is a number that would be a C grade. Personally, I'm not playing it over 51.5. 351 is the limit that I want to go to because I'm not sure what your take is. Model says 53. So kind of right in between that, those key numbers of 51, 52, 55. This is right around the average score at 53.2 what the model's projecting the average college football game this season. And so the market thinks it'll be a little bit on the lower scoring side. Obviously, pace wise, SMU wants to play a faster pace. Miami has not played with much tempo at all. Consider the surprising thing to me, and probably for a lot of people, SMU's defense creates out better than their offense. And I think that's where, had this been what we would have expected from SMU, more offense, then this total would probably be more in the mid to upper 50s. But SMU's offense leaving a little bit to be desired after whatever the heck that was last week. Clearly a look ahead spot for SMU, but usually a look ahead spot, you still thought they could have eked out the win and unable to do that. So not really sure what's going to happen with the side here. Miami's obviously the better team, but on the road. And so instead of playing the side, we're going to stick to the total. We just think this number's a little bit low and we're on the right side of a couple key numbers. Again, 50.5 B grade. We're playing that over 51, also a B grade over there is fine. Are you with me in that 51 is your number, or are you stuck here at 50.5 and not even playing it at 51?
I think that I would play it at 51.5 even.
Okay.
It's because I do obviously, if Carson Beck doesn't have the one game, right? The game that we saw against Louisville where he threw all the interceptions. I mean, we talked a little bit about that coming into the season. That is something that's always in the back of your mind with Carson Beck. But I think that against a team like SMU, he'll come out ready to play. And I think that clearly SMU was looking ahead to this game in that game last week against Wake Forest, which, I'm not complaining. I believe that clinched my season over.
I think it did, yeah.
In wins for Wake Forest. So not complaining too much there. But this is just one of those things where I think they were looking ahead. I think they come out ready to play, especially at home. That's going to be a very small stadium there in Dallas, but it's going to be loud for the size. I think, that crowd will urge on SMU. They'll play well on offense and get enough points to get over a number like 52. But 52 is it. I'm definitely not 52.5. No, that's cutting it a little too close even for me.
We are into November, which means we need to be looking at the weather. Now, this is Sunday night, folks, so we are not really certain what's going to happen on Saturday weather, but in Texas in November, the weather usually holds up, especially early November. Right now, it's looking like a nice day, projected high around 60 degrees, some slight winds, but nothing too concerning. So, right now, the weather does look fine. Probably will hold up. Not one I'm really worried about, as opposed to we get to the Midwest, some of the, northern schools, things like that, where we get really concerned with November weather. Miami, hat tip to whoever was on Reddit, I believe, and made the comment about the dreadful camouflage uniforms from Miami. Was a little bit worried going into that Stanford game. I made the comment that Carson Beck had a hard time finding his own wide receivers against Louisville. The camouflage isn't going to help him out anymore. Fully for him, he was
No,
able to have a
no.
bounce back game against Stanford.
I mean, I appreciate, I love a good Air Force Army game or Navy game more than anybody. Respect the troops. The camouflage uniforms, unless you're Army, Navy, or Air Force, we just guys, we can be as patriotic as we want. We don't need camo uniforms, guys.
We
I mean,
don't,
just
especially in upper football.
no
Why?
need
Because
for it.
camouflage, you're trying not to be seen. I don't know how that helps you as an
Yeah,
offense to not be seen as a
yeah.
defense. I don't really think it helps you that much either.
Make an exception for I may make an exception for Louisiana Monroe. It's like one of the duck hunting capitals of the world.
Okay, okay.
Maybe you do that there.
I think
Other
that
than
it
that,
wrong
no, there's
sport, but
just no
the
reason.
Padres, I think in baseball, I'm fine with that there.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
Big
There you go.
military
I can
base
get
there,
behind that. But see, that's
Yeah, there's
Navy.
certain
That's
exceptions.
Navy related.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we got way off topic there. Afternoon spotlight, yeah, folks. My in-laws are coming to town this weekend, and this is a great weekend for them to come because this college football slate is not very good. If we're highlighting Texas Tech and Kansas State as their afternoon spotlight, but there's just not a lot here that is like the top games that really have great implications for the playoff picture that your eyes need to be tuned for. The evening's a little bit of a stronger slot, but the afternoon we're going to talk Tech, Kansas State here, and cousin Jared, Tech did exactly what we thought they would. Ended up they were up 42-0 after the third quarter. The model projecting to win by 52. They ended up with a pick six in the guy's hands, and he dropped it. But folks, I don't know if anyone was watching. It was probably just me. I'm almost certain that was a backwards pass, and the ball, it was at like the 2-yard line, and the ball's sitting in the end zone, and everyone's just standing there watching. And I noticed the referee does not whistle incomplete. The ref's just sitting there, just watching it, and just everybody just walks away, and the ref's just like, anybody want to pick that ball up for, it's a live ball, you can get a touchdown, almost getting to 49. We thought they might win by a little bit more against Oklahoma State. They ended up on their third string quarterback because backup Will Hammond gets hurt. Starter Baron Morton was available in an emergency situation. You knew he would not be needed in an emergency situation against Oklahoma State. And so I'm going to feel pretty good about the model. The model being off by 10 points in a game that could have only been off by 3. They ended up beating their third stringer. They weren't tested late. So, I mean, I feel like Silent is a really good read on this Texas Tech team. Here's the issue is that we don't have 100% faith in Morton playing this week. Hammond's injury might have been a little bit more severe. I'm a little bit more skeptical that he's able to go this week. I think Morton is able to play since he was available if in an emergency situation last week. I assume 7 more days, he's fine. Right now, though, we have him at 60% just because we don't really know. And again, as we talk about with availability reports, we have to be a little bit more conservative because we've seen teams say things and then it not be true about being optimistic about their players. So is Morton actually was he really available last week? Honestly, who really knows, right? And so that's now going down to their third string does drop their rating, their offensive rating, about a point per game. And so from 60%, if we take out and go all the way to the backup, it drops it about 3 points. Right now, we've got Tech winning this by about 11. So, of course, that would not be the actual projection if we knew who was playing. The real projection would either be 12 or 9. And so we're going to lay the 7 with Tech here. It's a B grade because if it's 12 or 9, either one of those gives us good value. If it is a projection of 12 and you could still lay 7, that would be an A grade. So what I'm saying there, folks, is if we knew that Morton would play, we would lay 7 as an A grade. I don't think we're going to know that until day of or kickoff. So I'm not really stressing about this. I'm just going to say this Tech team is really, really good. We said it all along. They almost came back against at Arizona State, tough place to play, couldn't quite do it. We weren't deterred by that. They did exactly what we thought they would against a hapless Oklahoma State team. I think they're going to do exactly what they're supposed to do here against Kansas State, which is go on the road and win. They might only win by single digits. They might win by double digits. Sideline says good chance of either one. But the fact that we push on 7, win on 10, enough value for me to like this play, even not 100% knowing the status of their quarterback situation. There's just so much talent on a team. And Kansas State looked good against Kansas, but is still a flawed football team. And we kind of knew that from the very
Yeah.
start that they were taking a big step back. Cousin Jared, what's your take on this one?
Yeah. So my take on this is Kansas State. That was, I don't want to call this a lost season for Kansas State, but like it is 100% not the season that they thought that they were going to be having. And I think that last game against Kansas is a bit of an aberration. We've talked on this show before how you always know Kansas State is going to be up and wanting to destroy Kansas every opportunity that they get. And so I think there is going to be a little bit of a letdown coming off of that game. And Texas Tech this season is not the team that you want to have a little bit of a letdown against, because Tech does not need much space to cover a number like 7. I mean, I know they didn't cover that game, but even the game like Arizona State, where they were just down the entire time and they still managed to storm back there in the fourth quarter and almost win that game. I mean, you have to play an almost perfect game to beat Tech this year. And I just don't see Kansas State being able to do that, especially after coming off that game against Kansas.
Yeah, and Kansas State, just to highlight some of their struggles this year, not 100% certain they're going to make a bowl. And I think that would be
Mm.
surprising to most people coming into the season with such lofty expectations from that first game against Iowa State. Because you and I were talking about the model wasn't really high on either one of those teams. And sure enough, that's kind of lived up they've lived or down to those expectations. Kansas State did get that win against North Dakota, which keeps their bowl chances alive, but losing by a field goal to Iowa State, losing by a field goal to Army, losing that game to Baylor, I think was a really
Yeah.
disappointing one for them. A Baylor team that we've talked about is just
Yeah.
really struggled themselves. They are at 4 wins right now. This is going to be really tough sledding. I don't see how they win at Utah. They do get Colorado at home and they get Oklahoma State. So they're kind of eyeing a 6-6 season, assuming everything goes as planned. But yeah, just a real
Yeah.
tough season for Kansas State. And even though it's been a little bit of a down year for Arizona State's still a notch above Kansas State, still capable of playing that game when needed. And again, credit to Arizona State, they were able to do that and pull it off. Of course, then we were able to fade them last week because we said we loved fading them coming off of that, right? And then, of course, they showed
Right.
they're a little
Right.
bit up and down too. So a fun Big 12, and you kind of got to look at it and try to figure out how to zig and zag based off of some of the matchups, some of the coming off of the last week situation. And in fact, there's a specific game later that we're passing on because of that exact same
Yeah.
thing coming the next week. Saying, I'm not sure about this after what happened last week, because we
Right.
kind of got to look at that. And it's almost the same thing here. That was a great effort from Kansas State against Kansas. That keeps their bowl chances alive. But this Texas Tech team, just too good, too powerful. And so we like them to get it done here. Again, more likely to by double digits, single digits, make this with some slight value here, laying the 7. The evening spotlight, a couple good games to choose from here. We're going to choose Oklahoma and Tennessee. Strength on strength, Tennessee's offense and Oklahoma's defense. There was higher hopes for Oklahoma's offense coming into the season. There was higher hopes for Tennessee's defense coming into the season. Neither one of those has really lived up to fruition. Should be a good game. We're going to go to the total, though, and grab over 55. A handful of run, don't walk situations, Cousin Jared. I think this is one of them, 55, a very common outcome in college football. We've got this one pegged to be in the low 60s. So also could be you're worried about the wrong number, because we saw last week Tennessee play in a game that got out of hand points wise. We saw last week Oklahoma play in a
Yep.
game that got out of hand points wise. And so not that Oklahoma was the driving force in that, obviously that was more Ole Miss, but we've seen that Tennessee can play those type of games, drive teams to those type of games. We've seen Oklahoma last week play in a game just like that. And so to me, it just seems kind of a lather, rinse, repeat. I really think this run, don't walk, and you're worried about the wrong number. I think this number gets steamed up. I think people are going to start thinking about last week, those results, and this thing's going to get bet up probably to where it should be a lot closer to 60. Cousin Jared, what's your take?
Yeah. So I do feel like this is the exact same situation as Ole Miss last week, where I know that Oklahoma has a solid defense, but Mateer is getting better, getting closer to maybe what he was earlier in the season before the hand injury. I think people are putting a little bit too much stock in that Texas game when he hadn't got to practice very much in the lead up to that because, he broke his hand and played like 2.5 weeks later. But honestly, the biggest thing in this is Tennessee got into a high scoring game with Kentucky. And if you can get into a high scoring team with Kentucky, a high scoring game against Kentucky, Oklahoma will have no problems. You kind of matching the output of Kentucky and surpassing it. I can't believe that this isn't 58-59. Because if I would have hung this number, I probably would have put it either at 58 and a half or maybe 59 and said, does this game get to the 60s? Because, a majority of Tennessee games do. So I can't believe that you're getting something like 55 on this.
We're already starting to see this number rise. Like I said, I really think this is going to get up into that level. And so as it gets higher, Cousin Jared, I'm 100% comfortable playing this as an A grade over 57 and a half. We know that 58, 59 are your key numbers up there, probably 59, a little bit more than 58 even. What's your thought on that? At, 58, 58 and a half, 59, 59 and a half. Where are you kind of drawing the line? Where are you kind of saying, I'll play it, but I'm scaling back, or I'm just not playing it at what point?
Because of my last statement, it's probably 59 because I think 59 would have been the place where I would have hung it and I would have said, I don't know, can Oklahoma's defense do something really good against Tennessee's offense, that kind of thing. So to me, it just feels like 59 is my gut reaction that I probably would play over 59. I don't think I would play over 59 and a half. So I guess let me clarify.
So you're saying full play at 58 and a half, 59 is where you're starting to maybe scale back a little, that push protection there. 59 and a half is the no-go.
Yeah, 59 and a half, I'm just like, I don't want any part of that.
All right, and that would be also the point where we are starting to see the grade drop as it gets higher. The weather, again, we're really far up. It looks fine for now. And so, again, no reason to think this doesn't get pushed up towards that level, but we're still comfortable playing it up pretty close to 60 where we think it should be. The American game of the week, because Jared, I mentioned this last week, there were a handful of teams up at the top of the American Conference, South Florida, Memphis being two of them in that game. Now we've got Navy and North Texas. Should be a really interesting conference race here. Navy's still undefeated in conference. North Texas, one of the many teams with one loss. We think North Texas is actually the better team. Navy, a little bit of a softer schedule. That North Texas offense is just the gift that keeps giving. They got us the cover and the over last week as they continue to drive up scores late. Yeah, somehow they're just too good. We've got a B grade at North Texas -6.5. Sideline says 10.6. There's always a little hesitancy anytime an academy gets involved in these games and they can muck them up. I'm playing this one south of a touchdown because often with North Texas and Navy both, there are just only touchdowns. There aren't a lot of other scores. Now, there could be missed extra points or weird things like that where 6 might matter. So obviously if you can lay 6, that's a little bit better. But 6, 6.5, 7 seems okay. Because I'm playing this one because one of the things, and I texted you this when I shared this with our Discord, I texted right after Indiana scored that first time against UCLA. I said, why didn't we just lay it with Indiana? The model's been on Indiana all season. The model's been saying UCLA is definitely not as bad as people thought, but maybe they aren't quite this good. Why didn't we just kind of say the model's taking a stance on this and it's been mostly right? Let's just write it out. And that's what I'm doing here is the model's taken a stance on North Texas and said they're a good football team, and it's mostly been right. And so it's 6, 6.5, 7. I'm gonna trust the model on this one and say North Texas has been good to us. Why are we trying to mess with success? We haven't played or faded Navy hardly at all this season. So kind of an opportunity for us here, a new venture for us here, fading Navy. What do you have to say about a Navy team that I feel like we've talked almost nothing about?
Well, I think there's probably a reason that we haven't talked much about them, and you've already touched on that, is that their strength of schedule is just not, not much to talk about. And so I think this is going to be a real, learning experience for everybody in regards to Navy, because I think you're going to learn a lot from them in how they, play in this game. I'm like you, 6.5 Love it. 7. The problem
There's a
here
lot of ways
is
North Texas wins this game by exactly 7. I feel like that's so possible.
yeah. And I think that there is, tail end distribution potential in this game where if Navy gets down by 1 or 2 scores, it's over. Like, I don't think that they're going to be able to come back from it. They're going to have to start passing the ball. They're going to have to score a lot of points. It's just really going to get them out of rhythm offensively. And I think obviously that really helps North Texas. But at the same time, Navy could have a 13-minute touchdown drive. And that is the best way to stop this North Texas team, is to just not have their offense on the field. So I like it. Do they blow them out? Or, there's lots of in-betweens there. This might be one, if you were so inclined, where I would look more at like an alt total and say like, okay, yeah, I would play it at 6.5. But if it gets to 7, I almost rather lay like 9.5 or 10.5 or 13.5 or something like that and get big plus odds and assume that, North Texas gets 2 stops and like that's all they need to win this game by 2 touchdowns. So anyway, I talked about a lot of different things there, but basically I think there could be some tail end distributions on this, that North Texas could completely take Navy out of their game, or Navy could take North Texas completely out of their own game, and you could see some weird results.
Yeah, and I think my kind of synopsis on this, I think if you're playing the B grades at a little bit less, we're trying to listen to what we're saying, figure out if you're scaling back up or down, because I think there's some high variance in this one. This is one where I don't think I would have, my highest unit amount on it because of that possibility of Navy can just make games weird. And North Texas is that old school kind of like, as a Baylor alum, I'm thinking some of those older Baylor teams that had a great offense and a weak defense. And if you could have those 13 play drives, that the best defense really against a team like that really is that grinded out offense. And so anything could happen in that regard. But if in general, I think we talk about a lot, right? Model is strength of schedule adjusted. And I think while Navy obviously has had some good results here, kind of putting faith in the model and saying the model has a lot of data on Navy and who they played, and kind of just saying they're not that good, they're going to have a hard time stopping North Texas. As much as we talk about Navy's offense being frustrating to North Texas, maybe we should be talking about, as long as North Texas offense doesn't get cold, which again could happen, they
Right.
should have a pretty easy time scoring on this Navy defense that's not a very strong unit.
Right.
Speaking of Baylor, noon Eastern, why are we still doing
We
this?
we don't we don't we don't have to do this. We don't have to do this.
I don't mean talking about Baylor. I mean employing the same head coach. It's Sunday night. Why haven't we fired Aranda yet? I don't really know. We've been talking about it for weeks now. The Baylor defense continues to look terrible. The same thing happened last week as every week. They got down big. They looked terrible. They had a little rally in them because the offense has got some potential. And then this time, instead of keeping it close, they just kind of completely crapped the bed. But it didn't really matter to it was the same, just a different verse. I don't understand. At this point, I tweeted about this. I think Randa, as the football coach at Baylor, is basically saying we're happy if we just make a bowl game. I think that's kind of the aim here. And I feel like, there was a long time in Baylor football where that would have been a good thing, just making a bowl game.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they've had multiple coaches who've shown that better results are attainable. And especially in the recruiting, fertile grounds that is Texas. So we're going to continue to fade Baylor. Sideline says it's a pretty 50-50 game, and I would agree with that. Baylor's at home. I think this plays out just like the Arizona State game. I think it plays out just like the Kansas State game. One of those Baylor lost by 3. One of them they won by 1. Both of them came down to last-second field goals. Both of them might have come down to last-second field goals by both teams even. There were multiple late field goals in those games.
Mhm.
The way that it played our field goal attempts, I don't really know who wins, but I think it's going to be an anything kind of can happen. Now, of course, there's a lot of ways that Baylor can win this by 7. There's a lot of ways that UCF can win this by 7. So taking the 5 is not necessarily saying, foolproof in this regard, because Baylor could win this game, but their defense is so terrible. UCF's going to score a lot of points. It's going to be back and forth almost assuredly. In the end, it could go wild like the Cincinnati game. It could end up more of these Baylor games that's kind of, again, decided by at the very end. But there's just way more ways we win UCF +5 than lose. And so that's really, again, what we're all about here.
Right.
Cousin Jared, I really am surprised that this isn't Baylor -3. I still would take UCF +3, but that's where I'm like,
Yeah.
take it because there's not much happening at noon. But Otherwise, that's where, you're not getting quite as much value. We're getting a ton of value here, +5. Do you have anything to add to my misery?
Personally, and this is kind of just a habit I've developed. Maybe it's mostly been this season, maybe it's kind of last season. When it's a gross number like 5, I've found that I oftentimes split my bet. So personally, I'm splitting my bet here. I'm going, half on the +5, half on the money line for UCF because, in a lot less words, it's a Baylor game. Who knows what could happen? 50-50. Give me the plus odds on the money line, but also like the +5. So I'm probably just going to split my bet on this one.
There's a +170 out there right now at a
Yeah.
prominent domestic sports book. There's everything, +150s are just rampant. Like I said, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think this is pretty 50-50. I don't know how it plays out. I think, Silent giving a slight edge to Baylor, I think that's probably right. I would make it, 55% Baylor or whatever. But even if UCF only wins this 45% of the time, +150 or higher makes for great value. So I completely endorse that strategy
Right.
as well. This is one where, again, just watching Baylor, my gut says the +5 is just way too good to pass up, and people should definitely be running to grab the +4.5s, +5, +5.5, even if it's a gross number, because more than 3 or 4 with this Baylor team involved, and it not being West Virginia or Oklahoma
Right.
State at least, is just a
Yeah.
gift, in my opinion. Because we've talked a lot
Yep.
about this kind of already this show. I'm calling this game, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We're going to go Pittsburgh and Stanford. We're going to go over 52. When you look at Pittsburgh, they have been scoring points like crazy.
Yeah.
We've been finding
Yeah.
ways to back that offense. And so, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let's do it again. Average game here, Sideline says, is right around 55. Again, we talk about key numbers, 51, 52, your key number. So this is the wrong part of that key number. But some of these Pittsburgh games, they've just been scoring so many points. They're just flying through these numbers. It doesn't even really matter what they're setting it at. What's your take on it?
It's when Pitt made a quarterback change a couple of weeks ago, they benched Eli Holstein for the true freshman whose name escapes me. And I was thinking to myself, it's like, okay, Holstein was recruited to Alabama by Nick Saban, transferred to Pitt. Like, does Pitt really have a true freshman sitting on the bench that's better than, a former 5-star guy that transferred from Alabama? And I think the answer is yes. From everything that we've seen so far, his first game was good. I mean, it was good by true freshman standards. It was fine, but he has steadily improved. And I think Stanford coming across the country, not going to be the team to necessarily slow down this Pitt offense. The one thing I do want to give Stanford credit for, though, is I do feel like Stanford has gotten a little bit better every week. That first game of the season against, I think they played Hawaii. The first game of the season, it was kind of like, it could be a long season for Stanford. And, of course, some of the teams they've played in the ACC are not top shelf ACC teams, but I've been surprised with the progress that we've seen from Stanford this year. They're not going to show up and you're not just going to beat them by 35 every week, which with where they started, I feel like is a little bit of an improvement.
Like a weird game, especially
Yeah.
given what we saw
Yeah.
from Virginia last week against North Carolina. So this college football still can be confusing at times, for sure. And
Yes.
Stanford again back home on this one, but coming back across the country from Miami. We've talked about Stanford and some Cal both. Just this back and forth has got to wear on you, because even though they aren't traveling out to Pitt to play this game, having traveled back from Miami just recently is just a lot of wear and tear here on them. And at some point,
Yeah.
one of the ways that manifests itself is the game's totals start to get a little bit higher. And Miami, wasn't quite able to take advantage of that. But I can't believe I'm going to say this, but Carson Beck at quarterback, we talked about it, can be a little bit, you always know exactly what you're going to get. But with this Pitt offense, the pace they're playing at, right, we know what we're going to get. We're going to get fireworks with that Pitt offense, whereas Miami sometimes, like we said, play with no urgency, more of a pro style offense, that sort of thing. Pitt's just letting it fly with the freshman quarterback, Mason Holstein.
Yeah.
The name, and just kid looks really good. And so they've been scoring, and we're going to keep riding that train. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Over 52 in Pitt at Stanford in an early game for them, a 12th local start. Because Jared, give me Delaware or give me death. I couldn't help myself. Sometimes the segment names just write themselves. We're going to fade Liberty. We've kind of been fading Liberty all season. It's mostly worked for us, as the books have been a little bit slow to realize that this Liberty team is just not quite up to what they have been in the last couple of seasons. Delaware's a solid team, playing pretty well here in their first year in FBS. And Sideline says the difference is their offense in this one, the best unit on the field, while their defense leaves a little something to be, to be desired. That offense being able to go on the road in what might be their shortest road trip of the season for conference, given their proximity to many of
Mm-hmm.
the schools in Conference USA. We're going to grab the field goal with the Blue Hens, cousin Jared. What do you
Yeah.
have to say about this one?
Liberty's just not very good. That's about all I have to say about this. Delaware is, I mean, perfectly just as good as them, if not better on offense. So, even with giving Liberty the home field advantage, I think that this should be more like 1 or 2 points. And even with everything I've seen from Liberty this year, Liberty winning this game by 3 feels like, if they win this game, it feels like they win it by 3. I feel like, those 3 points are beneficial in almost any other outcome this game can have. Liberty has just not played well enough almost at any point this season to win any game by more than 3 points. Obviously, stepping outside of like the power conference teams, I think Liberty's been one of the most disappointing teams of the season. So yeah, give me 3 points with Delaware team that I think is a little bit underrated for how well they've played this season.
The last time we saw Liberty was on a Tuesday night against New Mexico State, and Sideline had a B grade play on New Mexico State plus 11. We were a little bit concerned about that because New Mexico State being such a bad team. Liberty only won that game at home by 3. Obviously, again, we
Yeah.
talked about earlier in this show, right? Like any one event swinging, 15 points one direction or the other shouldn't surprise anyone. That's just the nature of trying to make predictions in anything. You're always going to be off. There's
Hmm.
always going to be things that happen that play out. You play the game 10 times and 10 different things happen, right? So it's not as simple to say, oh, Delaware's better than New Mexico State. They'll go on the road and win. It's just another data point that suggests, just like we said, this Liberty team just not that good. And the model said they win by an average of 8 or so, and the books were even higher on Liberty than that. And, both the model and the books kind of coming down even more on Liberty, but we think by not enough that this should be under 3 is where it should be priced at. I am seeing a 2.5 in the market. I'm even seeing some 3.5. So this is kind of a right at 3 on
Mm.
average spot. There are some 3.5s at some reasonable juice. I'm not overly sure I pay too much juice for the hook here, but 3.5 at something like minus 115. There's some 3s out there for minus 105 are pretty reasonable investments here on Delaware. Kissinger, we've got a drunk football alert. Mississippi State and Arkansas. The other name for this segment could have been, have you seen these teams play? Like, my goodness,
Yeah. Yeah.
watching Mississippi State drag Texas into a shootout last week was just insane, given what we've seen from Texas and that offense this season and that defense as well. And Arkansas has just been doing this with everybody. Was able to get Auburn into a high scoring game. I don't know. This game, the model says 69. The books say 67. We're going to go over with a B grade. If this game lands in the 80s or 90s, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not saying the total should be set there, but my gut just says like this game's going to have a lot of points unless something weird happens. And weird things do happen, right? That's obviously there's no such thing as locks. But I mean, again, have you seen these teams play? I don't really know why
Yeah.
this total isn't set in the 70s. And then we would just look at it and go, probably go over, but I don't really think it's a smart play. But at 67, really too good to pass up because Jerry, tell us more.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you took the words basically right out of my mouth. I mean, have you seen these two teams play? And the thing is that as we saw with Mississippi State, you just need 9.5 minutes to score 17 points against them. And so, I just, there is going to be some stretch in this game where both teams probably give up at least 17 points in 10 minutes at some point throughout this game. And so really then you just need like the other 40 minutes to, get, about that number of points. So yeah, this is just too, I think, no, I think these are two pretty good offenses and just two bad defenses. I mean, Arkansas for an SEC team to be the number 58 defense in the SEC, that's pretty tough. You got to be pretty bad to be like that. There was a reason when Petrino took over, they let go of almost every coach on the defensive side of the ball. Unfortunately, it hasn't helped. But yeah, this game is going to be insane. I highly recommend, if you've got, the 4 boxes of TV up, I definitely recommend having this one on there somewhere because there will be action at every point in this game.
It should be fun. Again, just a quick weather alert. We are really early, but again, looking like highs in the upper 50s, around 60 degrees, not too cold. A little bit of a wind, 10 miles an hour, but that probably won't affect things. Keep an eye on that wind as long as it's not up into the 15, 20. That's where we won't really know up until a day or so before really what that's going to look like. But assuming that wind doesn't get too crazy. Cousin Jared, I am seeing there's still a lot of 67s in the market as at the time of this recording. There are some 67 and a halves. Your key numbers in the upper 60s probably your only real key you're worried about. So we're already above that. The model says 69. There might be a little bit of a reticence here. Again, you look at Arkansas last week, the game against Auburn only had 57. And I'm saying only because when you look at the Auburn games this year, 57 is a very high scoring game for Auburn. So for me,
Yeah.
I'm thinking that this game, like I said, could easily get into the 70s, 80s, and 80s. But the question here is when would we stop playing it if it continues to rise? Knowing our key numbers, even if it's 69 and a half and the model says 69.3, would you still play the over knowing that 70 is on the table? Would 69 be your cut point? Where's your head at with regards to how high you would play this over?
I don't think I would play it over. I don't think I would play it over 69 just because I am just personally averse to. I don't like having a game to get into the 70s. Like I don't know. It has to be such a very specific scenario for me to go over a number that's in the 70s with, two SEC teams. This isn't North Texas and South
The North
Florida.
Texas, South Florida.
Yeah. This is not that. And so for me it's 69 and that's the limit. I wouldn't play it over 69 just because that's a me personally, unless it's a very specific situation. I just can't bring myself to play. I can't bring myself to need a game to get into the set.
So so we would play over 68 and a half if it were to get there. You would not play over 60.
I would play over
half.
No, correct. Yeah, I would play over 69. At
Then you would not play
half,
it over
I'm
60. It's like you see uses the word over.
Yeah.
If it gets above 69, we would not be going over that number.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All righty.
That's right.
Folks, we remind people every week, you don't got to watch them to make the monies. And this is everyone's favorite segment as well with regards to just fade Oklahoma State. Just don't even care about the number. Just fade them. This is an A grade, according to Sideline, barely an A grade. Kansas minus 24 and a half. Sideline says Kansas wins by an average of 28. Obviously, a very disappointing outing from Kansas last week and a fairly disappointing season, I believe, for Kansas as well. But really, this is just all about Oklahoma State. I said it last week that I really thought the week before was kind of their best effort, and that I thought it was about to get really ugly as the season wears down. Morale gets even worse. The wheels start really coming off, and I think we're going to continue to see that. This is the thing that cures all ills if you're having a frustrating season in the Big 12 is facing Oklahoma State, and that's what Kansas gets here. Because Jared, what do you have to add?
Yep, I've got nothing. I can't believe Oklahoma State's 131. How bad you have to be at 131 overall for a Power 4 team. It's almost sad. Like I almost feel bad for them. Like it is just bad.
Yeah. It's not good. Kansas 4-4. This obviously gets them to win 5 of the season. And then they've got 2 chances on the road to get to bowl eligibility at Arizona and at Iowa State. So both Kansas schools will be kind of playing out November, trying to get into a bowl game. Obviously, Oklahoma State. You have to imagine just wants the season to be over at this point. Everything has gone wrong. They were 127 last week, eking into Sideline's bottom 10, and now they are, according to Sideline, the 6th worst team in all of college football. It just continues to get worse for Oklahoma State. Cousin Jared, unfortunately, I don't think this number is going down any. I'm starting to see some 25s in the market. Not that there's a big difference at that point. If this number continues to get higher, obviously, the model would say this is barely A grade territory and you're going to lose A grade at some point. But realistically, I mean, are we still playing this up to 27? We play it up to 28? What number? You said last week you'd play Tech up to 42 and they won by exactly 42. So you give us your prediction of what you played up to, and that's exactly what Kansas will win by. Is how this works, right?
Yeah, I feel like 28 is my number, and not because sideline says 28, but it's just like I just feel like that's about as good as Kansas can do, really. It's like 4 touchdowns. It's like, okay, then you get into like the fourth quarter, and you mentioned, an interception drop for a touchdown. Who's playing for Kansas at that point? It's getting towards the end of the season. Are they putting walk-ons in that like haven't played in any games this season? You
Yeah,
just kind of lose all
you're worried
control at
about
that
wear and
point.
tear, and you've got to win one more game for bowl eligibility.
Yeah.
You're up 4 touchdowns in the fourth
Yeah.
quarter. All your starters are out. I mean, we saw them in that first game
Yeah.
against Fresno State really take their foot off the gas, and again that they could have easily won by 50. And they
Yeah.
just chilled the whole second half. And so I agree. I was thinking maybe even 27, just because even though Tech wasn't going to be really stopped and forced to kick field goals, Kansas sometimes stops themselves. So I could see some field goals happening here as
Yeah.
well. So I was thinking maybe
Yeah.
27, but up to 27,
Yeah.
28 seems pretty safe. And again, a game where the fourth, you might look first half. Now, again, the first half, the problem is they're going to, odds makers are going to put a whole, you're not going to be laying 14 in the first half. It's probably going to be more like 7. Honestly, I'd probably even lay up to 17 in the first half, just because I think I'm more
Yep.
worried about weird fourth quarter happenings than anything else involving Oklahoma State. Still in the Big 12, walk, don't run. Arizona minus 4.5 as a B grade. Sideline says they won by an average of 8. Another one of these weird number spots that might go one way or the other. If it goes down, that's better for us. If it goes up, as long as we're laying 6.5, 7, probably makes a lot of sense. Arizona, well, they'll have to go on the road. The much better team in this one, Colorado, coming back to earth after they've lost their two best players, obviously, by far. Because, Jared, I have not seen much of either one of these teams, despite them being in the Big 12. It's the perils of having what seems like 25 teams in the same conference these days. What's your insight on
Mm-hmm.
these two teams?
Did you watch the first half of the Colorado Utah game? And that's really all that I have to say. It was really bad. Um, the whole season, the way that Colorado handled their quarterback situation made me kind of wonder. It's like, the old
Yeah.
saying goes like, if you have two quarterbacks, you don't
You
have
have
one.
zero.
But early in the season they had, three quarterbacks, and so like what does that say? Like when you're having to play three guys at quarterback 'cause you don't really know. And then the way that the wheels came off of the defense. I mean, obviously the offense was the problem. They had negative yardage at halftime, but giving up 43 points in the first quarter. I don't know how many yards per carry Utah averaged. It was over 10 in the first half of that game. It just seems like every single thing that could have gone wrong for Colorado has gone wrong so far this season. And now I think it's creeping in. It's like, oh, we may not make a bowl game. I just don't know how you bounce back from that Utah game. I think there's a lot of questioning what's going on. And you've got an Arizona team who Brennan was the favorite to be first Power Four coach fired this season, and I've been impressed with Arizona this season. They've played much better than I thought they would. So for me, I think this is just two teams specifically in this season that I think are headed the wrong direction. I think Arizona's on the opposite directions. I think Arizona's headed the way up. I think Colorado, like at this point, I think might start seeing the wheels fall off. And I mean, what do they have to hang their hat on? I mean, look at their offense, 76, defense, 75. Like they don't really have a redeeming quality.
Uh, if my math is correct here, they finished averaging 8.4 yards per run in that game. But yeah, 43 points in the first half. And I believe it was over 400 yards. I mean, 400 yards
Yeah.
to negative yards in the first half is just, I mean, most FBS schools in their bye games against FCS schools don't put up that sort of dominance. And so
Yeah.
obviously we always talk about you're not as bad as you look at your worst. So this is not to say that Colorado, I don't love fading a team after they look terrible. I don't love backing a team after they've played way above their heads, but this is less about that and more about just how bad they were. Yeah, they're not that bad, but
Yeah.
there's still a lot of levels of bad between where they were and where
Yeah.
they need
Yeah.
to be in
Yeah.
order to lose this game by a touchdown. And that's what we're saying that we
Yep.
think Arizona does here. And again, kind of as you mentioned, a little bit more about just Colorado on the whole, just not really having an identity, not really having, a quarterback that they clearly have a lot of faith in, and not really having anything going great for them at this point. We're talking about bowl eligibility, 3-5, and they do end up with their final 4 games being easier, they get West Virginia, who's one of the weaker teams in the conference, but that's on the road. So that won't necessarily be the easiest travel. They get Arizona State at home. They get, again, the Kansas State. We talked about it, that, on the road. So a bowl game not out of the question, but needing to go 3-1 in these final 4 games, coming off of that performance doesn't really inspire a lot of confidence there. So you could see a great game out of Colorado here as kind of their last stand there. If they're going to put up and they're going to make that bowl game, that, it's got to start here, that sort of thing. But to some extent, we always talk about maybe we don't overthink things too much and we just kind of rely on the model to say who's the better team, how much should they win by, and as much as we want to say, this is at least a bounce back spot for Colorado, this Arizona team is the much better team, and a team coming off of a bounce back spot themselves, barely losing to Houston and coming off a bye week. And so Arizona having that bye week also helps them as well with regard to the situation. Kissinger, a new segment here for us. That Hansel's so hot right now. And that's really Washington State at this point, playing really well. We faded them last week. We talked about how well they played and kind of said, hey, if they were able to win that game, then that really shows us, that they have turned a corner. And sure enough, the model has adjusted as we expected it to adjust. Says that they win this Oregon State game by an average of 7.5. I guess this is for the Pac championship. I assume there's a trophy ceremony after the game for the Pac trophy. I don't know.
We could only hope.
I hope it's on the Pac-12 network. I assume about as many people would be able to watch it as watched all the games previously on the Pac-12 network. This is the last time I guess we can make those jokes, so we have to get them in while we can.
Yeah.
Oregon State just, not a great season, not really many things going right for them. Washington State things definitely going in the right direction. We're going to lay 3.5. Obviously, we'd rather lay 3, but this is another where I wonder if we're worried about the wrong key number here, if this should be closer to 7. Because, Jared, we've finally stopped fading Washington State. We finally come around. It maybe took us a little bit longer than it should have, but better late than never, right?
Yeah, and I do think that we're not worried. I think we might be concerned about the wrong number here because Washington State on the upswing. Oregon State, they've already fired their coach. They went winless in the first 6 or 7 games of the season. Oregon State is a bad situation right now, and I think Washington State They had those 2 close losses to Ole Miss and Virginia. They beat Toledo last week. And I feel like this is another game where they can just kind of let it all go. Outside of Washington, as much of a rival as Washington State has right now, I think they want to prove a point that, like, hey, there's only 2 of us, and there definitely one of us is much, much better than the other.
Yeah, well said there. And this is one where I'm seeing a little bit reeking out to 4 in some places. There are a couple 4.5s out there randomly. Definitely shop around, obviously, and find better numbers. So a lot of 3.5s out there, at least as of the time of this recording. But I'm like you, I really think this should be up closer to a touchdown. That's what the model says as well. Because, Jared, are you playing this? We're definitely playing it at 6. Are you playing it at 6.5 and 7 as well?
I'm playing it at 6.5. I'm not playing it at 7. I just can't bring myself to do that. Even as much as I feel like that's the right side, I can't bring myself to do it.
You mentioned alt spreads earlier. This might be one to look into an alt spread, even proactively, even if the number does stay at 3.5 in a lot of places or does bounce back and around that number. If you're able to find a 3 eventually, if it comes down there, I don't see why that would happen. I think the market's been pretty anti-Oregon State for some time now, so I don't see why that would change. But if it does, obviously 3 is great. Otherwise, I kind of think laying that 6.5. I don't know what kind of plus odds you might get on there. It won't be great plus odds, but every little bit of plus odds can help there, knowing how tight the margins are in this sport. Or official, you're worried about the wrong number game. Southern Cal at Nebraska. We've been talking about this kind of all show. We talk about this in a lot of different contexts every week. Nebraska getting plus 6.5. A lot of people would say we want to make sure we get the 7. Obviously, I would love the 7, but Sideline says USC wins by an average of 2.5. I really think the key numbers here 3 and 4. And so as long as you're on the right side of that, it makes a lot of sense. I don't know who wins this game. USC's the better team. That Nebraska defense taking a big step back here is the main reason why. If this Nebraska defense was as good as we thought it would be at the start of the season, kind of more up in the 20s or so rather than the mid 40s, then I think this is a lot closer to the pick'em that Nebraska fans would hope it would be. But I think there's just a little bit of an enamoration with this USC offense, which is really good. But traveling halfway across the country, good home atmosphere, night game for Nebraska. I think this game stays close. A lot of ways Nebraska loses this one by a field goal, and we get back into the old days of Nebraska loses close bowl games. They've won a bunch of close bowl games of late. I don't know if they can win this one, but I do think it stays close. Getting 6.5 is an A grade according to the model. And Cousin Jared, a situation where we think the wrong number here is the focus and it should be closer to a field goal. Tell us more.
And I can't believe this is 6.5, mostly because with everything that we've seen from, the Lincoln Riley teams, especially on the road, well, what makes you think, even if they win the game, what makes you think that they're going to win this game by more than a touchdown? They seem to chronically play in these close games, especially on the road, because historically their defense hasn't been able to get enough stops. So yeah, I couldn't believe I was getting 6.5. And I mentioned earlier that, I was going to split my bet on some plays. That's something I like to do. Not going to do it on this one. Just give me the 6.5. I like I said, I feel like even if USC wins this game, there's plenty of ways they don't cover a number like 6.5. So just give me the points in this one.
USC went on the road and they beat Purdue by 16. I think we can all agree that Nebraska is multiple levels better than Purdue. So I don't really think that's a good comparator.
Yeah.
They went on the road to an Illinois team that honestly is up and down and has looked great at times, that has looked terrible at times. They didn't look great last week, and they lost to Illinois by 2. They went on the road to Notre Dame, a Notre Dame team that the model does really like, and they played admirably, but still lost that game by 10. They've done a little bit better at home, but on the road, like you said, they've had a little bit of a harder time, especially some of these longer travel games. And Cousin Jared, for me, this boils down to Nebraska's offense being decent, being competent. And again, I think this has got to be really frustrating if you're a Nebraska fan. It's going to be a little bit frustrating, I believe, if you're Matt Rule as well, right? I know there's been a lot of talk about him making the leap to Penn State, being a former Penn State player and having relationship with the athletic director there. But if I'm looking at Penn State making a hire here, I think my concern with Matt Rule is that he got the offense to come around to where he needed it to be a top 25 team, to be a 10-win team, and get Nebraska at least closer to their glory days. And his calling card, the defense, has really taken a step back. But I actually think that helps them in this game, because even if their defense was better, they're still probably going to give up some points to USC, but their offense is competent enough at home to keep them in and score. If this was the older Nebraska teams, while I would say their better defense might give them a better chance at pulling the upset, I would also say it creates a better chance that they get blown out. That tail possibility you mentioned earlier, right? More likely to win, but more likely to get blown out, because the older Nebraska teams were much more likely to be in a situation where if they fell behind 2 scores, they were done because they couldn't score enough points. Their team could just kill the game. This Nebraska defense being not as good, again, hurts their chances of winning, but their offense being a little better. They're down 2 scores at home. They could come back and score and get right back into this game, because USC's not that great of a team. So a little bit of a different world here in Lincoln. You kind of solved one problem, didn't solve the other, but the way it sets up is more likely to keep it close. So we're going to grab the 6.5 there. An A grade play. Because is there time for your favorite segment here? Cousin Jared Hart's the Sun Belt. Arkansas State at Troy. We've got to get a Sun Belt.
Yes. Yeah.
Here, we're going to lay the 7.5 with the Trojans. Sidelines is doing by an average of 13. I believe we had double picks on Troy last week, and they both won. And this week we have double picks on Troy again. And so can they both come through for us? We're going to talk about the side on this one. That Troy defense, the best unit on the field. Arkansas State, not as bad as they've been at times, but going to be clearly outmatched in our opinion. Cousin Jared, you're our Sun Belt guru, so take it away.
Yeah, so Troy early in the season, and I'm blanking on the quarterback's name, the fine person who keeps the rosters updated, changed the depth charts and took the original starter out. So I'm blanking on what his name was. Goose Crowder, yes. Goose Crowder, he was good last season when he played. The problem is he was hurt all the time last season. So that was something I had my eye on. I was like, hey, if Goose Crowder can stay healthy, this Troy team is going to be a problem this year. He didn't even make it through week one. He was hurt again. And our boy Tucker Kilcrease came in, and the problem is he was bad at first when he was first playing. But as the weeks have gone on, there has definitely been some improvement, and now he is a reasonable Goose Crowder substitute at this point. And really, that's all you need from this Troy offense is to be adequate. I was about to say this is the Sunbelt version of Iowa, but that's taking it too far. The point is that Troy's defense is good. They just need okay quarterback play, and they will be able to cover against teams like Arkansas State, who doesn't really have anything that they can hang their hat on. So Troy scared me off at the first part of the season after Crowder got hurt. We had, a few weeks in a row where we were taking Troy overs, and it just was not profitable. But we've got to the point now where the offense is playing well enough that we feel good backing them to cover a number like this. And also, the past couple of weeks, their overs have hit as well. So it's mostly related to the improved quarterback play over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said at the start there, it was very scary watching Tucker Kilcrease play. He looked completely
Yeah.
lost, but playing really well as of late. He's up to the fifth best quarterback in the Sun Belt, according to Sideline, and rising to the point where there's not a huge gap between him and some of the quarterbacks right above him. We talked last week about Colton Joseph being the quarterback for Old Dominion, being the best quarterback in the Sun Belt, but not a huge gap between 1 and 5 here. And not that I think Kilcrease is going to be able to overtake it this late in the season. But when you look at just current form, the way he's playing, it's not crazy to say that he might be the quarterback that you have the most faith in going forward here in the month of November in the Sun Belt. And Troy 5-2 with a solid defense, not the best defense in the conference. That honor would go, according to Sideline, at least to James Madison. A very strong defense right now. Basically tied for second best defense in the conference with a couple others right there around them. So again, a strong defense and improved quarterback play. Troy was good to us last week and got us the win. We're going to lay the 7.5. B grade, A grade if it's at 7 for this one. Again, so many games land at 7, and so that's why that isn't the A grade. But again, another one of these situations, like we talk about all the time, could be worried about the wrong key number because this maybe should be more in the 10 to 14 range. One of those 7.5. So the books are daring you. I will lay the 7.5. I will take that dare every day of the week with how good how good Troy has looked here, especially as of late. And your favorite segment, the After Dark special, not an island special because Hawaii is on the mainland, but an After Dark 9:30 p.m. One of the rare late games here this weekend. Hawaii at San Jose State. We're going to take Hawaii at plus 106 as a B grade. Southern says they win 54% of the time. We backed Hawaii as I believe at A grade, coming to the mainland last time they played and got
Colorado
the win.
State,
So it is possible to back them coming to the mainland and have success. So we're going to dip our toe into the waters. Again, this Hawaii team already bowl eligible now at 6 wins. And Sideline says one of the stronger teams in a very down Mountain West this season. Are they good enough to get the job done? Again, we penalize Hawaii for coming to the mainland. So the model does know about that and still thinks that they should be the favorites here. So another way we can look at this, our favorite, the wrong team favorite game. Because Jared, After Dark, Mountain West, what are your favorite situations? Tell us more.
It's almost like, if you hire Timmy Chang at Hawaii, good things happen. And so really that's the thing I want to talk about. I don't really care about the game, whatever. Plus odds, toss-up game, who cares? So I was just, because of, I'm blanking on his name now, the North Texas quarterback throwing for over 600 yards, I got curious and did some research on, passing records and everything. Would you venture a guess as to who I'll just tell you the top 3 all-time passing yards leaders are Case Keenum's number 1, Dylan Gabriel's number 2, and Timmy Chang is number 3. All of them played 5 seasons. I think Dylan Gabriel may have somehow played 6. I'm not quite sure.
Maybe because of the COVID year.
Who is the first person on the list, and he's 4th, that only played 4 seasons?
My gut.
So this person's 4th on the,
like a Colt Brennan or someone like that. Someone else from Hawaii.
Colt Brennan. Okay, fantastic, fantastic. Thank you for guessing Colt Brennan. Colt
Oh,
Brennan actually 14th. However, Colt Brennan only played 3 seasons.
wow, there you go.
So
Yep, yep.
yeah, that is
That was my fear
actually
with him is I
even
couldn't
the
remember how many seasons he played.
yeah, that is even more impressive than anybody else on this
Yeah,
list, is that he
yeah,
only played 3 seasons and
yeah.
got to number 14. Number 4 is Landry Jones.
Wow,
Like, yeah, yeah. Those Oklahoma offenses were just
those were
so
insane.
good, and they have been forgotten in time.
Yeah,
But man, they all of those, even before, Baker Mayfield and Jalen Hurts and Kyler Murray, even
mm.
before that, Landry Jones, Sam Bradford, so many good Oklahoma offenses. Anyway, Chimmy Chang is the best. Even all these years later, he's the best. So
This
that's
is
all I
like
have to say about that.
the worst analysis of a game ever. But I just have to add as well in my recent NCAA 26 dynasty, I believe after it was like his first year, Timmy Chang got hired by like Georgia or something insane. The coaching hires in that game don't make any sense. They're completely just bonkers, like
Yeah,
lateral moves all over the place. But I just thought that was funny. I think Timmy Chang, I think they won the Mountain West in the first season. He got hired somewhere really good. And
yeah,
I'm thinking
yeah,
he probably should get a good offer. I don't know if he's gonna leave because obviously his ties to Hawaii. I don't know what it would take for him to
right,
leave, but doing great things. We were very optimistic about the program. I think at the time we've made a comment in his first season, we were like, hey, long term optimistic about Hawaii football. We were very very
yeah,
optimistic about it. We were a little bit worried about how long it would take, but it's kind of coming together. And interestingly enough, coming together, I'll point out back to this game with Hawaii's defense being so strong. We've talked about that as well. They aren't
mm,
playing with crazy fast pace. They are kind of playing that same offense, but it's not quite the same, pace that those old school Hawaii offenses played with. Not the same weak defense that would just constantly give up scores and get the ball back. That defense has actually become a strength of theirs. They went to the mainland
yeah,
last time again, won against Colorado State. Before that, had an impressive home win against Utah State. They're coming off a bye week. Hopefully, they can keep that momentum rolling. But if they're going to be taken seriously as a contender here in the Mountain West, they're going to have to be able to go on the mainland and win some of these kind of coin tosses
yeah.
type games. Again, we're going to see if they can get that done here. And we think they're the better team. And even though it's a tough trip for them, that they can get the job done for us. That's all we've got. Thank you so much for watching. We have more available over on Patreon. You can get all of the picks, just the picks only for $9.99 a month or for $19.99 a month. You can get all the insights, all the grades, the Discord chat, so many extra fun benefits. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, because your parting words before we head out.
If anybody's wondering why I'm wearing my Astros gear during, I guess a football show, it's because we had a Halloween event at the church prior to this, and I dressed up as an Astros player during this year's playoffs, which is not a uniform or anything, just merch because they weren't in the playoffs. So, yeah.
I don't think I know what to say to that. I will say I was confused. This is the first time the Astros have been in the playoffs in so long. I was like, hey, it's October. What are the Astros playing? Like looking around, like, where's everybody at?
Yeah.
Guys, like showed up to Minute
Yeah.
Maid Park. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
where's the game?
Yeah, it's not too funny, but when you live in Houston, it's funny.
Yeah.
But if you were anywhere else, it doesn't make sense. But it was
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Well, again, hopefully we can finally break our Groundhog Day here and have
Yeah.
a week where maybe things kind of click for us here. We keep hoping that'll happen. But if nothing else, again, as a reminder, we always talk about, right? We're just trying to win more when we win than we lose when we lose. And unfortunately, every week, maybe that's not quite exactly what's happened for this college football season, but if nothing else, you are seeing that greater principle of protecting our bankroll. And that's what we're doing here by following the models that even though it hasn't come together like we hope, by only losing a small amount, we are at least protecting our bankroll. And we're just biding our time, waiting for things to turn around like they always have before and go, well, maybe this will be the week as we turn the calendar into November. Hopefully everyone here has a good Halloween, be safe out there for that. And as the weather starts to cool down, enjoying some football as we head into November, we can get some more W's. Again, thank you for watching, and we'll see y'all next week.